So, I want to talk about my first job, not only because it's about how I began my career, but because it's a story about fate and why things work out the way that they do, and just kind of helped shape me into who I am today. So, picture it Sausalito, 1996, fresh faced 22-year-old girl is walking in to the office for her very first day on the job as a systems administrator. That is right. And most of you probably you're getting ready to drop off and stop watching the video because you can't connect with the story I'm about to tell, because it's one that not a lot of people can relate to, and that's okay. This is my personal journey, and I just want to tell the story at any rate. I don't expect to get any comments either because, again, it's going to be something not a lot of people connect to, but I like this story. So let me back up a little bit and tell you how I ended up working in tech as a brand new grad with an associate degree basically in art. So, my older brother actually got me the job. And so this was my dad's oldest kid from his first marriage, and Mike and I really didn't know each other very well at all. We only lived together very sporadically. So I thought a couple times, like, why did he think of me? And then I realized Mike and our other siblings we all grew up with computers because my dad loved electronics. Like, this man loved electronics, and we always had a computer in the house. And so Mike was working as a systems administrator, sysadmin. And so, basically what that entails was he was creating users on the network. He was doing backups of data and just other, like, kind of, technology fixes around the company. And he needed someone to be his assistant, and that was me. So basically, I was a sysadmin. A lot of my job entailed also kind of a little bit of office work, and it was an interesting fit for me because my whole background had been retail, and I had figured out at my very last retail job, because it was computerized, how to run reports on what items were selling, and then I would merchandise based on that to try to steer customers toward buying the items that were not selling. And my boss at the time noticed and asked me if I wanted to come work upstairs in the office, and I said yes. So anyway, working an IT job for a technical recruiting firm, which meant that I was scanning in people's resumes and doing something called OCR, optical character recognition, and then correcting the mistakes that the OCR made because it wasn't very good at that time. But I was also creating people on the systems, this is before Active Directory, before we really had Outlook, and also just, again, helping my brother back up things on the server. Okay. Our commute was a little on the longer side. I was living in a city called Rohnert Park, which is about 45 minutes north of Sausalito. Sausalito's just minutes north of the Golden Gate Bridge. And Mike, at the time, was living in Windsor, which is another half an hour north of Rohnert Park. So we had a long commute. So what we would do was we would meet up at the Park and Ride near my house, and we would drive down together. We would carpool. This worked great until about, I want to say 6 months in, something like that, a couple months in. My brother, Mike, and my sister-in-law decided to adopt a baby, and he took a job closer to home, which meant I had no one to carpool with on this long commute. Now, the fact that I was making so little money at the time made it kind of ridiculous that I was commuting, but it was a really good opportunity. So I decided to look to see if there was any other way that I could get into another carpool. And I did a quick internet search. I don't even think Google was not around at that time. This was Yahoo. Maybe Dogpile, one of those other search engines that existed at the time. And I found that the Bay Area had a site called Bay Area Rides, which I think is called 511 Info or something these days. And I put in my location and my work location looking for a carpool partner. I got one match. It was this guy named Jim who lived with his girlfriend in Cotati, which was not only the next town over, but down the street. And he invited me to join his carpool. He was already driving down with another person. And we decided that that's what we would do. We would meet up and drive on down together. Instead of Rohnert Park, we would meet up in front of Jim's condo in Cotati. Now, the other person that Jim was in the carpool with, Jim and I were in our 20s, and the carpool partner he had, I want to say, was around 60 or so, kind of a little closer to retirement, and I don't remember the gentleman's name at all. I want to say, let's just say for the sake of argument, let's just say his name is Greg. Greg was not friendly. I went to meet him and Jim, and I got a little bit lost trying to figure out which car was there, so I ended up being 2 minutes late. And Greg really took offense to this. He had places to go, and so he spent half to 3/4 of the drive down that morning berating me for being late. I decided, well, I guess carpooling's not for me, and I determined to figure out some way to make my commute more tolerable. So I went home and sent an email to Jim and said, yeah, thanks for inviting me to commute with you and Greg. I don't think it's going to work out. Jim messaged me back. Actually, he said, I've been trying to get out of my carpool with Greg. Greg is, we're not getting along. It turned out Greg was one of those guys that didn't believe in paying taxes. And he just he was like a conspiracy theorist and all this other shit. And Jim just didn't connect with him. So Jim and I made the decision to carpool down together. Jim, by the way, again, he lived in Cotati. He worked at East Fort Baker, which is in the Presidio, part of San Francisco, which is where a company called Industrial Light and Magic used to be. This will become important later. And anyway, we struck up a friendship. He introduced me to his girlfriend, Julie, and the three of us began hanging out. And then he told me that I needed to meet his entire friend group, which included a guy named Steve. He did not go by Steve. He had a nickname, but his real name turned out to be Steve. And Steve and I eventually hit it off. And within a couple of years, he and I got married. And we were married for 19 years, had one kid, and bought a house and did all the things. And we got divorced 7 years ago. 7 years ago, we got divorced. And there's a whole other backstory behind that. But yeah, again, from this carpool situation, met all these people and had all these adventures together, all because I needed a carpool partner. So the other thing to know about this company, it was a tech recruiting company. It was on the main road in Sausalito. The main street is called Bridgeway because, of course, the Golden Gate Bridge is right there. So it's on Bridgeway. It was an old hotel that had been converted to office buildings. And I mean, it was cool. I felt like, oh my God, I'm just like this little country bumpkin from, Santa Rosa, California. And I'm working north of the Golden Gate Bridge with people in the tech industry. This is so cool. And again, I did this, my little, systems administrator type of thing. I was the company's IT person when my brother left. You don't understand. And I look back now and I go, I was the IT person. I just can't believe it. I had an associate degree in art, and I was supporting this whole group of people. But I could also talk to people. So they gave me promotion to technical recruiter, and that entailed me on the phone with people all day, talking to them about their experience. And because of that, I learned more of the terminology of tech and how to talk to people like software engineers and web designers and web developers and things like that. And they figured out that I was picking up the terminology, and they also knew that I had a little bit of a background. And one day someone asked me, "Can you make a logo?" And I was like, "Yeah." I had taken Photoshop in college, and I thought, well, Illustrator can't be that hard to pick up. But we didn't have Macs at my company. We only had PCs. So I had to go to Kinko's across the street to use their Macs to make a logo. And so I did that. I also started attending events with the owner of the company. Now, let me back up a little bit and tell you the owner of the company, his name was Roger King, and his wife was Kathy Lord, and sometimes she went by Lord King. So they were the Lord Kings. You cannot make this stuff up. They lived in this very shishi house up on the hills in Sausalito. Again, I was the IT person for this small company, and he handed me a $20 bill one day and had me take his Cadillac to go get it washed. Okay, 52-year-old me is like, fuck that. 22-year-old was like, oh, okay, whatever. But then he promoted me to tech recruiter, and I started going to events that he was attending. And at one event, it was at a company called Fair Isaac, which people in finances, financial services, finance, you know what a FICO score is. That's the company that created the FICO score. And we were at the building, where the headquarters. And Roger said, "Hey, I want to introduce you to my buddy." And the guy, this nerdy guy with glasses and kind of hanging out in the corner, turned around and held his hand out and said, "Hi, I'm Craig. I'm the founder of Craigslist." It was like that for not quite a year. I went to my very first office Christmas party while working at that company. And it was, I didn't know what I was expecting, but it was something else. So our company Christmas party, for people that are familiar with Sonoma wine country, it was in the town of Sonoma. It was at a winery called Vianza, which is still there. And basically, they didn't have enough room inside of the winery to host us, so they set up a tent. Like, when during COVID they had tents. So we had one of those with tables and all that. And all these people and leadership of my company decided it'd be a great idea to have an open bar and not even drink tickets or anything like that. So the wine was flowing and people were plastered. And at one point, the guys, like the men, Roger and all the guys, decided to start dancing, shoulder to shoulder in a line doing high kicks, including my coworker Susan. She's one of the other recruiters. Susan's boyfriend, Andy. Andy was a nice guy. Nothing against him. Super nice guy. I don't know how many people in the room knew that Andy had a prosthetic leg, but he did a high enough kick that we all found out very quickly, because his leg actually came off and went whoop, 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 and flipped down end over end and landed in the middle of the dance floor, and everyone burst into laughter, and he was very embarrassed. And Susan had to help him get back into his leg, and she's like, "No dancing for you the rest of the night." So I probably have to cut this off quick, but that was quite the experience. That was my first tech job. That was 30 years ago. And I ended up pivoting from tech recruiter, because I got laid off on 9/11, whole other story, to web designer. And the rest, as they say, is history. If you think women don't work in tech, we totally 100% do. We're the minority, but women actually kind of created a lot of the things that we know of in tech, such as programming languages. Lord Byron's daughter created a programming language, okay? There was a job called computer, which was basically software engineer in the 60s. It was a pink collar job. It was something that women did. And Grace Hopper, She was an admiral in the US Navy, actually coined the term bug. So, hi, I'm me, I'm Nora. I have been in tech now, again, going on 30 years, and don't plan on stopping anytime soon. Oh, and I was going to tell you why ILM is important. So it turns out that Jim, my friend, my carpool partner, he was getting into a sport called fencing, which is, you know, the guys with the foils, on guard and all that. And he actually created a fencing club here north of me in Santa Rosa, called On Guard Fencing. And one of his students, I guess, was a guy that worked at ILM as a sysadmin. And when I first met this person, I said, hey, I know someone named Jim who's into fencing. He's like, oh yeah, I know Jim. And that person ended up being my current husband. And he and Jim actually get together sometimes when he's, you know, pretty regular with the fencing once a week. So kind of full circle.